What are the keys to the Knights taming the Wildcats?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me as he does every Friday on the eve of the game is the guy with the first and last word from the Last Word on Sports, Andrew Glukov. Keys to the game. Every Friday, Andrew, we talk keys to the game, and every week I'm going to say RJ Harvey.
That's like putting in the cheat code.
They can't win without RJ Harvey. I believe he's still the third leading rusher in the country right now.
He is, and that's because he got hot last couple games.
He did, but they can't win without him. Look, they need a big performance from him. We don't know what UCF is going to get through the air. Gus Malzahn, as of us recording this, has not named a starting quarterback. We have some intel that we're not going to share just yet, but it's going to depend a lot on what they get from that quarterback position, because UCF has to establish a passing game. And I expect Arizona to put the ball in the air. UCF has to be able to do the same, but they can't do that unless they establish their own RJ Harvey.
Well, yeah, and it comes back to the run blocking, which has been suspect at times throughout the year. The last two games, they found a formula that has started to work a little bit, but they can't keep it consistently going. And, look at the Iowa State game. RJ Harvey runs rough shot on the Cyclone defense in the first half, over 170 yards. And then the second half, 9 carries, 18 yards. They've got to be able to change it up. Now, here's the thing. We talked about this earlier in the week. Tim Harris is now the play caller.
Yeah.
It's no longer Gus. So how does that change the dynamic of this team? Because there's going to be changes. So do we see more passing? Do we see more outside running? Do we see more up the middle? I mean, hard to say, because we've never seen Tim Harris call plays at UCF.
Well, while that's true, our friend Jake Crane from the Daily Wire, host of Crane & Co., he came on yesterday and he talked about this very subject. You may switch play callers, but that's still the same call sheet. So you're running the same plays in offense. So much of it is about flow. When does he call runs and passes? And like you said, run pass balance. Yeah. Do you have a signal, a trigger man that allows you to call more of the playbook?
And the other thing is, do you maintain personnel more on the field to increase tempo? Gus Malzahn was always known as a tempo guy, but they don't run a tempo offense that much at UCF. They do a lot of substitutions, slows things down. Does Harris go back to pushing tempo more, or does he take a more conservative approach? And Jake's absolutely right. The plays don't change, but when you use them will. And how you use them well, and what the strategy of the plays, you got all the same parts, but how do you put them together? It's all building blocks, and we're going to be seeing potentially a whole new team, but we also potentially could be seeing the same team. So you're right. At the end of the day, RJ Harvey is going to make or break this team. But one of the keys of the game I have is 50% completion percentage by the quarterback. And I'm assuming until we hear otherwise, it's Jacurri Brown.
That's a low bar, Andrew. 50%.
Well, 60% was asking for too much. She hasn't hit 50% in the last two starts.
That's fair.
So let's make it a little bit higher. You got to at least hit 50% of your targets. That's enough that at least the defense may take the passing game slightly seriously, back off just enough to open those holes and allow a very patient runner like RJ Harvey to really just tear it up. Otherwise, they're going to stack the box.
50% of what, though? 50% of what are you giving them? 20, 25 throws a game?
I didn't give a set number because, it could be 12. It could be 20.
6 of 12? Oh, man. I hope those are some 80-yard bombs.
No, I don't want 80-yard bombs because he doesn't have the deep pass touch. And we haven't heard on this, anything confirmed on the status of Kobe Hudson. The last thing I want is an 80-yard bomb. I want to see the short and middle thirds where the passing's at, because he's actually not terrible at that. Brown can make those throws. He just needs to, not look like, looking for the home run ball. It doesn't work. If you don't have the chemistry, if you don't have the talent, it's a bad move. And he's thrown into double, triple coverage on more than one occasion, trying to get that home run ball. No, take it easy, go through your short middle reads, and then if it's not there, tuck it and go. As we know, Jacurri Brown can run the ball. BYU did an excellent job of game planning to shut down the quarterback run. Gus talked about it post game after the BYU beat down. It was a mauling. Don't let the score tell you otherwise. That was
Andrew. Look, this offense is not good enough to consistently have to drive the length of the field, and this team wins. So for me, it's going to be win the field position battle. This defense has got to do enough to create short fields for this offense so that they can get big plays 40 yards or in the opponent's territory and score some points. They've got to get on the board. They've struggled. Now, our listeners were arguing with us in the comments about whether this offense had improved over the last couple games. And there were some stats that I wanted to get at here in talking about what happened? What happened? Prior to Iowa State, you scored 13-13 and 21 points. Now, some will say, look, you had a pick six versus Iowa State, but still, certainly by the numbers, they started to move the ball better against Iowa State and BYU, even though that did not result in wins. But it feels like they started to the start of something was happening with this offense. I think you have to continue to build on that. But if you're going to build on it from the scoreboard, they need short fields to work with.
Well, they also need red zone efficiency, and that was one of the big things that has improved over the last couple games.
Yeah,
is they get in the red zone, they're putting not just field goal on there, they're putting touchdowns on there. And with the exception of what happened against BYU with the taunting call that took the ball from the 10-yard line, pushed it all the way to the 25, and they had to settle. You take that out of it, and they were being more efficient in the red zone. I that was one of the keys of the game that I had going into the BYU game was red zone efficiency. And while I didn't put it as a key to this game, both scoring early
goes away. Yeah.
and red zone opportunity conversions to touchdowns are still on the list because those are areas that they still haven't fixed. They didn't score early against BYU. They were down 17-0. And then red zone efficiency, sure, they were 2 out of 3, but they didn't get in the red zone very much. And as a result, didn't score a lot of points. But you talked about, having the short field that does play into the fact that I brought back third down defense.
Yeah.
This is an area that haunts UCF. And in fact, I'm going to take it a little bit further because BYU also had a couple of fourth down conversions, including the ultimate fake field goal that made national news because of how beautiful it was. It was executed to perfection. It's like getting that perfect medium rare sirloin steak that's just seasoned beautifully and just has great color and flavor. It was just a wonderful play to watch from an execution standpoint. From a fan standpoint, it's a nightmare. And UCF, special teams bought too much into the field goal thing. They got out-coached. But third down defense, this is a recurring theme for the Knights. They just cannot get teams off the field. If they can create 3 and outs, they flip the field and push them further and further back. Even if UCF doesn't score in a drive, if they can get a first down versus a 3 and out, they're going to push oppositions back towards their goal line. So, it all comes back to that third down defense. Get your defense off the field, get them a chance to have a break and rest a little bit, because as the game goes on, they're going to tire out. They're just going to start giving up big plays and chunk yardage. And it becomes a cascading problem. So that's my second key to the game is that third down defense.
Yeah, for my last one, it may sound like an obvious one, but you got to stop Tetairoa McMillan. You cannot let him go wild on you in this game. It's tough. I think that it's tough. He might be the best receiver in the country. And I know that might sound wild to some
He's
people.
up there.
Yeah, but like he might be the best receiver in the country. And when you have a player that good, you've got to do all you can to limit his involvement in this offense. And you've got to make life hard on them offensively. I think it stops with stopping Tetairoa McMillan.
If he's not the best receiver in the country, he's definitely up there. He's probably arguably the most important for his team.
Yeah.
If you take Tetairoa McMillan's yardage and touchdowns in consideration, he's about 47% of all passing yards and like 45% of all receiving touchdowns. You take him out of the game and the offense sputters to a stop. They don't have anything. So the big key is shut down McMillan. And that's also my third key to this game. If you can do that, it really helps that third down defense, which then really changes the dynamics of the offense and maybe makes that 50% of the quarterback completions not as important, because if you have favorable field position, you can run the ball a little bit more, score early, establish a little tempo in the lead, and then you can start to just milk the clock down and be able to run the ball more, tire out the Arizona defense. Their run defense is not a world breaker by any stretch of the imagination, but if they cannot stop McMillan from making big plays, and UCF has been susceptible to the big play every so often, it could be a long day.
I agree with you. Look, Tetairoa McMillan is him. And after a quick word from our sponsors, we're going to tell you how you could be him. Andrew, this episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Hims.
I'm sensing a theme here. It's all about him.
Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and you always want to be ready so you can perform in the bedroom. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be some no-name receiver, or do you want to be Tetairoa McMillan in the bedroom? Well, Hims has the answer for you. Look, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy, so you don't have time to go to the doctor's office and get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked-on. That's hims.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatment. These ad reads get me every time, Andrew. They get me every
RJ
time.
Harvey is him.
Everybody's him on Hims. Look, UCF needs a him at quarterback, and they haven't named one, which
they
is
needed
why
anyone at quarterback.
Oh, my goodness. It has been such an adventure here. I think that if any one thing defined how UCF season is going so far, it is the uncertainty at quarterback after KJ Jefferson has not been what they thought he was going to be. Look, we talked about this with Jake. Talked about this, on the crossover show that we did earlier this week. Luke and I went back and forth on this, Mike Luke, but I don't think we should write off Dylan Risk. And I wonder if going into this week in preparation, if they gave him a serious look at maybe some second team reps, how do you look at this if you're Gus Malzahn? Because when we talked earlier this week, you said that you think that they want to preserve EJ Colson's red shirt. And if that is the plan, then what's the harm of maybe promoting your fourth-string quarterback to second string and then bringing him in behind Jacurri Brown if Brown turns the ball over like we saw him do in the second half of that game last week?
Well, I think you're going to see maybe not so much in the Arizona game. I think the Arizona game is going to be a little more conservative because the season's not lost. They win this game, they're 4-5. They can easily turn it around. Outside of Arizona State, who's faltering, they've been dealing with injuries, you have a soft bottom half of the schedule. West Virginia, you never know what you're going to get. And Utah, which is, oddly enough, the media poll the Big 12 Media Days picked Utah to be number 1 in the conference. They picked Arizona to be 5th. They picked, I think, Oklahoma State to be like 3rd or something like that, or 4th. They've struck out on a number of these picks, and it's not too late for UCF to salvage the season. If they lose this game, depending on how to lose it, I think they may be more willing to go towards Dylan Risk. I don't think so as much. Gus did say that he wants to preserve EJ Colson's redshirt. He is a true freshman. Dylan Risk does not have that problem. He's a redshirt freshman, so that's already a non-issue.
Right.
And Jacurri Brown is a redshirt sophomore. That wouldn't be a thing anyway. So, unless practice was that bad, I expect them to run out with Jacurri Brown. And then if things kind of fall apart, you throw Risk back in there, see if they can put a shot in the arm. It's really hard. And I'm going to use a quarterback that was on the team a couple years ago, Tommy Castellanos. Tommy came on in this, I believe it was the Space game against Temple. And UCF is just beating the tar out of Temple. It's not even close. And he looked really good. Problem is, he's playing against third unit players. He comes in for an injured John Rice Plumlee, later in the year, and conference championship, he wasn't ready, and he froze, and he looked terrible and unprepared. It's hard to really gauge how a player looks when you're in garbage time against a backup unit. So I got to take a degree of what he did with a grain of salt, but I did like his decisiveness. He threw relatively crisp. He did have a couple, one particular throw that could have been a pick six going the other way. It did not happen, but he showed some scrappiness and the ability to tuck the ball and run and take a hit. So that can't be fully discounted, but to say that he's ready to take center stage against, the ones, be the guy that's scouted against, I don't know if he is.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but,
I think that's why maybe you give him a look in practice. I agree with you to some extent, man. If you haven't been practicing with the ones and you've not been taking first team reps, I don't know about throwing him out there. I'm hesitant to say what reports we got from practice this week, but look, at the end of the day, you've got to figure something out at quarterback, and that has to include pushing the ball down the field through the air, which Jacurri Brown, quite honestly, has been awful at so far this season. And I know it was against maybe the second string defense versus BYU, but Andrew, man, some of those passes looked good, and you still have to go out there and make the passes. If you're Dylan Risk, you've got to perform against whoever they put you out there against. Certainly, if he had done bad, people would have been like, see, he couldn't even do it against the second team defense. But he did do it. And 6 of 10 for 102 yards is right where you thought the percentages should be for the quarterback, around 60%, to get it done. You don't have to be the reincarnation of Peyton Manning out there. You just have to go out and complete enough passes to keep the defense honest and let RJ Harvey bring you home.
Yeah, this is a run first, run second team.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And Jacurri Brown was scouted really well and game planned really well against by BYU. They shut down his ability to tuck the ball and run, which he carved up Iowa State. Hey, that's why UCF was still in that game. RJ Harvey has done that stuff multiple times throughout his career. In fact, he's the first running back since Marquette Smith, when UCF was an FC with a 1AA school in 94-95. So he's the first FBS running back in UCF history to have back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, the guy's legit. RJ Harvey is him. Hashtag. But seriously, the truth is he's the focal point.
Yeah.
They're going to dare the quarterback to throw the ball. So you just need someone who's serviceable. The question is, against the number ones, can Dylan Risk make the progressions quick enough as opposed to the number twos and the number threes? So, from a practice standpoint, I would have him, as you said, take some snaps, play against the number ones, see how he does. But, as you know, Gus Malzahn likes to keep things close to the vest. We didn't even know about EJ Colson starting until game day, shortly before warmups. That rumbling started coming out. This is not something new for Malzahn to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to kind of tease on something. The Big 12 is looking into doing injury report stuff next year.
Okay,
that could
there
maybe
you go.
change this tactic going forward. As in 2025 and beyond, we've seen the SEC do it. I think the Big 10 is also doing it. I'm all for, hey, if you're going to be like the NFL light, and there's betting involved, and I know FanDuel is one of the partners of Locked On. If there's going to be betting involved, you have to know. It's almost irresponsible to withhold information that could impact someone's ability to make a smart decision about their money.
Yeah.
And if the school's withholding that stuff, shame on the school. So I'm all for this. I think it's a great idea to be able to do that.
Well, you and I know football is a game of outcomes, and next we're going to predict the outcome of this game after a quick word from our sponsors. As Andrew mentioned, today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The line on this one is sitting at -6 UCF, I believe, right now. It has not moved much. I wondered how quarterback news might actually move this line one way or the other, but right now UCF is favored in the space game, which they have won, 8 straight?
Yeah, they are 7-0 in space games, and none of them have been particularly close.
All right. Well, I know UCF fans hope that will continue, but whether you're betting for UCF or against them, go check out our friends at FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, as is our Friday ritual, we're going to give predictions here. As I mentioned, the spread on this one is 6 points. The over-under is 54.5. Andrew, what do you got here?
I have UCF covering this one. Weird things happen in the space game. I don't know what they destroyed, embarrassed, humiliated Oklahoma State last year, shutting down Ollie Gordon, making it an absolute nightmare for him as the UCF Citronauts destroyed the Cowboys 45-3 in true poetic fashion. Not the first time that they've absolutely rocked another school during the space game. So I think UCF is going to cover this. I have them 31-17. And this is always a fun one, Mike. For those who have never seen a space game, they create a whole custom set of uniform, helmet. Each part of it tells a story.
Yeah.
This one is about moon dust and moon landing. And each part is very meticulously designed. It's a very well thought out process by the equipment staff. It's very cool. It routinely ends up at the top or, finalist or even the winner of Uniswag's Uniform of the Year. I think they're a 3-time winner. And they have the Helmet of the Year as well to go on that. So 7 times, 4 awards. That's pretty good. But I have UCF by 2 touchdowns, 31-17.
31-17. All right, I like that. It's funny. I cover another team where I picked them 31-17, and I like that score. Look, Noah Fifita, you can turn him over. He's got 11 touchdowns to 10 interceptions this season already.
It's been rough.
Yeah. Look, and I think they proved versus Iowa State that this secondary can get turnovers versus good quarterbacks. Look, they turned over Rocco Beck. They can turn over Noah. I think they do it in this one, and that's why I think that the Knights win 35-14. And that's one, right? So the history of this game plays into it for sure. Now,
Mike, I want to point out, as far as picks go, I'm 2-0.
You are.
I'm patting myself on the back.
Yeah, but I have picked the Knights for 2 weeks. Now they had 2 really tough opponents, and I will say this: that Iowa State, they should have had that Iowa State game. They should have had that Iowa State game. BYU, They looked outmatched. They did look outmatched versus BYU, but I did not anticipate the regression of Jacurri Brown in that game. BYU fans told us all week that they felt like their defense was underrated. I think that panned out at least to some extent, although with some help from UCF on offense. In this one, though, McMillan is an absolute stud, but he can't throw the ball to himself, and that's why I'm picking the Knights in this one. Like I said, I'm going 35-14 Knights. They move to 4-5, and they begin somewhat of a resurgence of their season. Andrew, I want to thank you for joining me. Before we get out of here, as always, tell people where they can find you.
You can catch me on Twitter /X at StatBoyDrew, and catch my work on The Last Word on College Football, part of the Last Word on Sports family.
Guys, thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends over at the Big 12 Podcast. Our friend Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news and holds no punches when it comes to covering every team in the Big 12. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be back at you guys Monday with more Locked On UCF.